There is a small bone that protrudes on some people next to the thumb. Sometimes there's one on the other side too, but it's not always visible. Generally thinner people have them and heavier people do not, but it's not always noticeable. It depends on who it is. Never is demonstrating to me that there's a lump on the other side too. So, you know, it really depends on the person. Yeah, whereas I don't really have a noticeable one on either side. That I've noticed, really. No. I have a slight bit of a bump on the outside, but I've seen people with it on the inside as well. So, but I guess it's probably more common on the outside, so we'll stick with that. Any other questions? You want hands? It is totally okay to use yourself as a reference. Just make sure you don't only use yourself as a reference, or everything you draw is going to look like you. You know, you can do so much with mirrors and with just looking at your hands and whatnot, but sometimes it's better to have other people as reference, so you have more of a diversity of how people look, because no two people look the same. I don't know why I'm gesturing, because there's no way you guys can see me doing it, but I don't know, I talk with my hands. And then I crack my knuckles so you can all hear the wonderful sound. It is a good excuse to ask people to strip, but only ask people to strip if you know they're okay with it. Consent is important. Don't just go around telling random people to strip. You ask nicely. And if they say no, you leave them the hell alone. And if they hit you with something, you probably asked the wrong person. I'm sorry I keep cracking my knuckles of drawing them all clenched up. Yeah, there's a variety of ways that you can get a hold of live models, or you can use photos. I'm going to bring up a website here. This is an absolutely fantastic website for figure drawing. And there's an animal section too, so you can work on your animal heads and paws and whatnot. Excuse me. Whatnot is your favorite part of an animal? Yes. Okay, are we ready to move on to paws? Or are we having any more hand questions? And I'll include all the links in a text file as part of the download package. Loomis is also an amazing reference for anatomy. It's more for learning how than it is for actual reference. And there are different schools of figure drawing, but I personally subscribe to the Loomis school, so that's just what works for me. Just waiting to see if anybody has questions. Neck angles, lengths, and widths back to the body. Okay. Okay, so let's do a focus on the muscles of the neck here, or at least the visible muscles of the neck. So your two biggest muscles are these ones right here, which I do not recall what they're called. And then you have the sort of center bunch of the throat. And then the sides. And the back, of course, which wraps around, but you know, whatever. And these two center muscles, or side muscles, come down and meet the collarbone, creating the hollow of the throat. Look at this mess I'm making. There we go. And depending on the angle that the head is turned, these might stand out more or less. They also tend to stand out more when the jaw is clenched or open very wide. The neck. Generally, you want size of the neck in relation to the shoulders, is there should be a room for another head on each shoulder, so they could, you know, balance skulls or whatever. And then the neck is just whatever takes up that middle space. But of course, you know, that varies depending on how muscular someone is, how thin someone is, how fat they are. It's really hard to say this is what size a neck should always be. But generally in a fit person, it's going to be the space between two heads on the shoulders. One thing you want to make sure you're drawing is how the neck twists. So it's going to be twisting this way to look that way. Folding in back to look up. You know, not that ridiculous looking, but you get the idea. Folding in front to look down. This is all very cartoony, but just to give you a basic concept. Does that cover it for you, Flying Fire? Forgive the heavy breathing sounds, I'm going to be vaping a bit. Okay, I'm going to do paws real quick and then we're going to move on from anatomy. Because I still want to get color theory and texturing in here. Oh, and a bit about how tails attach, because that's really important for furry art. Okay, so a lot of people draw paws like, you know, 4 lumps attached to a tube. That is not really what a paw is shaped like. Each paw toe is actually, the bone underneath is shaped like this. So the toe itself is going to be this sort of shape. And that allows for a lot of bending and twisting. Arching and whatnot. I mean, if you look at your own toes, they're not just tubes, they have joints to them. And an animal's toe is the same way. Most animals do not have dew claws on their back feet. Feel free to add them in if you want a five-toed character, if you want them to be a genetic abnormality in the species of dog or cat, whatever. But generally speaking, most animals do not have dew claws on their back feet. And while there's a lot of room for flex on where and how you want to do the claws on hands, on paws, generally, it's going to be about the same. If these are the toes, the claw is going to come out like this. Where do cats' claws go when they sheathe them? A cat's claw is actually the last joint on its foot. The claw retracts up like this, if I remember my anatomy correctly, and my cat's foot correctly, so that it can't be seen outside the toe. And then it comes down and out of the sheath. On a dog's foot, at least, the claws all go towards the center of the foot. So the toes are aimed to be pressed together. And this is all covered in Drawing Wildlife by J.C. Amberlin as well, so if you want more information on paws, please do read that book. Do you have any questions about paws? Let's see what Flying Fire is thinking. Yes, that's exactly right. And that's perfect. I will add that to the list of images to download. What about things that don't have claws? Most things have claws. What are you thinking about? Are you thinking about like ungulates and stuff? Oh, well, I'm not going to really sit here and do a tutorial on bug feet because that would take quite a while. Bug anatomy is a whole different thing. But, however you want to handle feet on an animal that doesn't normally have feet, I think is entirely up to you.